Hi everyone, my name is John Denver B. Peranka. I will discussing the chapter 12, Love of Oneself. Love of oneself. Wisdom according to Socrates begin with this one basic principle. Know thyself. He referred to a human mind as a storehouse of truths, which man has only to recognize and realize in order to acquire a truth and certain knowledge of what we to become a person. If anyone knows what is right and truth, he became help but choose it is consistent with it. Accordingly, Socrates view knowledge as anonymous to virtue. So it is said that wisdom according to Socrates begins with a basic principle, know yourself. He defined the mind and man as a storehouse of truth that must only be recognized and realized by man in order to have a truth and a specific knowledge of what shall be we do as a human. So next is love and selfishness. To know yourselves is to love ourselves. To love ourselves is to acknowledge the fundamental godness of our nature and share it with others. Love is the tendency towards what is good. Selfishness is withdrawing in our lives, putting ourselves ahead and of all above others. Love thrives in justice on what is honest and beautiful. Selfishness is the overflowing of greed and pride. It is true that loving ourselves means being concerned with our needs. It is true that loving ourselves means being concerned with our needs, but our preoccupation with ourselves must be regulated by temperance, including others and selflessness. It is not narcissism, so no man lives for himself alone. The concept of man for others is not a novelty. We find ourselves in the self of the other. This is how it is since our human nature is social. The commandment love your neighbor as yourself tell us both and why and the how. We love our neighbor because he is like us a person. We should love him by not doing to him what we do want to be done to us. When we do this, we show our concern not only for others, but our great respect for ourselves. So the next is the ethics of self-perfection. It is our duty to develop by actualizing our potentials. In the biological sense, this means growing in years and maturity. In the moral sense, it means molding our character, ethics, and so far as it directs us towards this goal is called the ethics of self-perfection. The goal of ethics, as Paul Tillich point out, is to become a person in a community of persons. In a Filipino, this is translated to pagpapakatao, equipped with the natural power of self-develop. Man does not need money or expensive mechanical devices to build a splendid character. For Telich, it requires only that we actualize that we are essentially and therefore what we are potentially. All that one has now to do to apply the intellect and will on these values that truly reflect our nobility as a person. And will not those values that truly reflect our nobility as a person, so the systematic improving of equalities and habits of a person or a human. So the next is the integral values of the person. So integrity of the person is the totality of his being as composed of body and soul. Actualizing then our potential is like linked with the hierarchy of value. So we have three duties. So the number one is biological duties. So number two is intellectual duties. So the last one is moral duties. So earlier we have classified values as biological, intellectual, and moral. And insofar as these values are integral to our development, we have both the duties to seek them out and the right to possess them. So, our basic personal rights, correlative to our natural duties, are the rights essential to our integrity as a person. The right to religion's worship is one thing. Let us consider there is the following. So the number one is the right to life. Number two is the right to private property. And the last one is the right to education. So I will be tackle the first one is which is the right to life. So the number one is the right to life. The right to life is the most important of all our rights. It is the foundation, we may say, of all other rights. The 1987 Constitution expressly grants the rights that our rights to be alive and to be secure from physical harm is a primordial duties of the government. The right to life secure us not only from physical harm but provide us to promote of our economic, cultural and spiritual growth. So the right to life secure us only from physical harmful but provide for the promote of our economic, cultural and spiritual growth. So everyone right to have to life should be protected by law. No one shall be deprived of his life intentionally, save and executional of a sentence of a court following this conviction of a crime for which the penalty is provided by law. This means that nobody, including the government, can try to end your life. So the second one is the right to private property. Delivered from the right to life is the right to private property. Preciously, because man has the right to life, he also acquires the right to private property, to those necessary for the sustenance and maintenance of life. In this condition of labor, Pope Leo declares that it is within man's right to have things, not merely for temporary and momentary use, but in stable and permanent possessions. Man's survival will be uncertain if he does not have the means of to support of lives and his disposable. Saint Thomas Aquinas, however, distinguish between the right of possess and the right of use. So man's survival will be uncertain if it does not have our means to support his life and his disposal. So Saint Thomas Aquinas, however, distinguish between the right of possession and the right of abuse. So So here is the common example of private property. So the ownership of the house. So I will be giving the common example of the right to private property. So private property is the ownership of a house. The owner of the house typically has the right to live in or sell it or rent it out to others. So that is the common example of the right to private property. The last one is the right of education. The right to education comes from man's rational nature. Every child is entitled to be educated by his family, by the state, and by the church. In the Philippines, the education of children is a serious concern of parents. The sacrifice Filipino parents are willing to endure in order to send their sons and daughters to college mark their love and nobility. Support of the children, as defined by the 1988 Family Code, includes schooling or training for some professional trade or vocational even beyond the age of majority. So, supportive children as defined by the 1988 Family Court includes schooling or training for some professional trade or vocational even beyond the age of majority. So the right to education for has been recognized as a human right and a number of international conventions, including the International Convention of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which recognize the right to free, compulsory, primary education for all, an obligation to develop secondary education accessible to all with a progressive introduction of free secondary education as well as an obligation to develop equitable access to higher education for every children.